All right, welcome back to the Lycan League, a brand new European weekly tournament that's been brought to you, of course, by Lycan Group, Lycan GTV on Twitter. He runs the late game and many other things StarCraft 2 related, as he's got that passion. But getting into this match, it's the first best of 3. In the round of 8, spawning in the bottom left corner of the map, we have ESE's Pink Protoss Jade.
Never right, as the blue Terran, it's Red Blood Pros, Lillekanin.
Alright, so there's a couple of things we can pretty much count on in this series. Number 1, non-standard gameplay. And I think what's really good about this is Jade is smart enough to know that Lillekanin plays a bit different, that he plays a bit weird. So I don't think Jade approaches the series with the expectation of Bio, Marines, and Stim. And if he does, quite frankly, Jade, if you're listening to this VOD, you're an idiot. Because we all know Lillekanin likes to play mech when he can get away with it. And one thing we've been seeing notoriously a lot lately, of course, is his we'll call it overuse of Banshees, his abusive use of Banshees, however you want to look at that.
Yes, abusive.
Yeah, it's been painful for Protoss players, bottom line.
Yeah, but we have seen a couple of Protoss players just, you know, they're not even like people that we really know. And they are actually pretty darn good against mech. So I don't know what Jade is like versus mech. There really haven't been enough games that's PvT, that's versus mech, so it's hard to call, but it's possible that he is. You know, we either have the people that just cut it, you know, nip it in the bud, right? Where they're just like, they win before like 10 minutes and you're like, lol, you tried to get tanks. And the people who are just good in the macro game, you know,
yeah.
they know how to run around or get the perfect competition or whatever.
Well, I think one of the key things, too, going into this, all of those other things aside, is questioning what exactly that competition is going to be. Whether it's nipping it in the bud, getting ahead of the game before the Lillekanin can, or whether he plays the macro game out. I still think watching Crank style versus versus mech has been my favorite solution. I've really not seen a great response from meching Terran players to deal with late game carriers, to deal with Tempest, to deal with the really heavy hitting air tech. Oh, pardon me, there's a hiccup there. Oh, that hurt. But yeah, there's definitely ways around it. Archons can work fantastically against most things mech. Despite the fact that they don't bring the bonus damage, they can soak hits like no other. Of course, Immortals are just fantastic at shutting down anything that comes out of the factory, even Hellbats to a lesser extent. Hellbats, of course, are really good on mass versus Immortals, but that's beside the point, because, again, a lot of this comes down to what is Jade going to do.
Well, we already have a kind of weird PvT opener. Usually it's one gateway expand, and that's just what you do. And so we have 2 gateways thrown down. It's like a PvP opener. Really facing a Terran?
Earlier aggression might pay off better, though. I mean, there's a couple other things to consider, too. If Hellions start coming by, if there's going to be anything dropped, having more units to deal with it could be better. I agree, it's weird. True. It's weird, and it's not standard, but neither will likely this matchup be.
That is true. I guess, yeah, you're gonna have extra units, and that's bottom line. That's gonna be better for defending against like the weird stuff that you know Lillekanin is gonna do. But on the other hand, we have seen people deal perfectly fine by going for safe build openers, so like 1 gate expand at a robo, or you know, you get a forge down as well and deal with the banshees pretty well. Like what he's doing, it does cut into his own economy, but it is gonna be helpful. So.
Yeah. Well, for Lycan, it looks to be a Woodmine opener with this drop. I like that there's a bunker coming down behind this, playing it super safe, but he does, by doing this opener, cut out his own command center. So this Nexus getting ahead could help propel Jade to the mid-game where he really needs it. Again, there's going to be a photon overcharge, sure, but that can only defend 1 of 2 bases. Woodmines will probably be dropped in both if given the right chance, but hopefully we do see that Robo come down soon, because if we don't, it's bad news bears for Jade.
Yeah, that's really what you need. I mean, having more Stalkers is always going to be nice, but you need that, plus the Photon Overcharge, and maybe a Militia Core in decent position. The Militia Core did go ahead and scout for a very common proxy location for Terran on Overgrowth. It was very wise of him, as Lycan has abused that spot on top of your main a lot on this map. And it'll also have advanced notice of this medevac, potentially. No, it goes back home. Never mind.
Well, it is one Woodmine, 6 Marines. Quite a bit of damage in here. Might just end up using this to zone out the ramp rather than take the fight to the mineral lines, but I think we all know that if you can get away with a mineral line Woodmine hit, it's the best case scenario. But as we see, he does head forward. It will get the burrow off. And now this kind of just cuts the place in half. Could just go to the low ground from this point on. It doesn't really have to fight here on the high ground.
Yeah, this is actually really perfect. The Stalker did go down, the natural, but it then ran to try and, I guess, deal damage on this side of the map.
I really wish we'd see things like hallucinations come into effect for moments like this, where you want to bait out a Widowmine hit, but not on anything important.
Yeah, or probe. Probe would be better.
Yeah, almost gets that shot.
Not better, it'd be the same, but just basically, like, he wouldn't have enough. You don't usually get sentries that early anymore, like, to actually have Lucent Phoenixes, so he did not. But that would have been good.
Well, Guardian Shield played out pretty nicely there as well, helped reduce some of the damage, but ultimately at the end of the day, he's up by 10 workers, he's on a second base, he's looking to be in a pretty fantastic spot. Tanks, Banshees, all of these really, what would normally be offensive, but for this instance, defensive units coming down, because he is probably worried about the Stalkers, he's probably worried about small counterattack, but right now what he does have to worry about before all of that is getting his natural base down.
Yeah. The longer he takes to... Okay, this Stalker's gonna die. There's no escape. The longer it takes to get down is like his defenses at each new base, the more time it gives Jade to just like hit a really nice timing with, 4 mortals, +1, whatever. It's just... Well, the Banshee, I guess, is gonna help out here. That's like the Banshee's job.
It's scouting for drops, but yeah, drops are not the culprit.
Yeah.
Now, last time we saw this happen, it was to CPU, and this went really poorly. We never saw any cannons come down. And it might not seem like a big deal, guys, but a couple of cannons, I'm not talking like per base, but like a couple of cannons, period, helps really shut down the Banshee aggression. So I like that he's getting these down. This is a pretty big deal, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, the Banshees have really been Lycanin's thing, Like, either they're really good at being part of the army and adding a lot of damage, because there's 6 of them, or they're great at just keeping the Protoss army home. Because what the Protoss army can do is that they're actually the faster of the 2 armies, which is kind of odd to say, but it's true, even without Blink, that they can actually posture on Lycanin's army if they have nothing to worry about back at home. Helen run-bys or Banshees. But now, if there's a Banshee, Lycanin can maybe defense up just a little bit easier.
Well, one of the other things about the Banshee that should never be forgotten, and this doesn't get taken into consideration because we don't see it enough, but it does attack twice. So one of the big things about the Banshee is it will strip away the immortal shields fairly quickly, as it tends to be that hardened shield effect that is so difficult to deal with. But looks like he's found the sweet spot, just barely out of range on both sides. So the Banshee will live for now.
Yeah.
But
we have Jade going for like the power-up Protoss, very fast third base. Well, relative to the Terran.
I'd still call that a fairly fast third base, just generally speaking. Because, he was taking a bit of aggression. He didn't really know how far or deep this would extend, the Widowmine opener and all that jazz. But he's done a great job of pushing back the Banshees, and he's done a fantastic job of minimizing probe losses through this. Still leads by 10 workers.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want this to go to the late game, though, if we're going to be completely honest right now. I really want to see how Jade decides to approach a late game mech-based composition. And Lillekanin, he's not exactly tunnel vision when it comes to this. I think once upon a time, his macro was probably his greatest weakness, but one of his greatest strengths was he's really good at controlling his army and know exactly what he needs. So I doubt we would see a situation where he completely ignores ghosts, or doesn't have Hellbats to buffer for the tanks. As this game draws on longer, the sort of cheesy element that his mech does start wearing off for him, but it doesn't mean that the army gets weaker. It just means that he gets to actually play the game out.
See how that goes. Lucent Phoenix goes forward to try and scout what the army looks like, if it's already fortified at the 3rd or not. If it's not fortified at the 3rd, you just stay at the 3rd. The thing about tanks is that they have to take the time to siege to actually be effective.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Sometimes unsieged tanks can do a lot of DPS.
Exactly. Unsieged tanks tend to be, I think, sometimes even better than siege tanks when it comes to fighting Protoss. Again, that faster attack speed wears down the immortal shields quicker. You lose the splash, but the single target is just fantastic. However, despite all this, we still have Banshee Harass going on the other side of the map. Cannon's coming down in this 3rd to make sure this doesn't go on too much longer. But we got feedbacks, we got soon-to-be storms, we got ghosts coming out. I mean, this is really going to be that caster game that... Ghosts versus Templar.
I really wish Jade would use his Robo more, either for Immortals or for Observers. And as I say, he did set up Immortals again, but I feel like at this point he could have 5 Observers covering every single path, extra Hellions he could get in, and 2 for, the Banshee defense back at home, because cannons take care of most situations, but not all. You gotta wait for the Cloaked run out otherwise. But at the very least for those Immortals.
Well, regardless of what is going on composition-wise, going back to the economy for a moment, I mean, Lillekanin is really starving on gas, and this is where that third base comes into effect. Not having your 5th and 6th geysers, it's really hard to produce more than a couple tanks at a time to get ghosts out above all else. Ghosts are freaking expensive in the first place, so he's hurting on all fronts right now. He's really got to get that third base down.
Yeah, he could probably go ahead. Like he probably could have done a lot sooner. In fact, I think the most critical part of his army right now, just as they're both basically like building up, you know, Jade is probably getting out to a point where he's going to have a big army very soon, as he's on 61 probes, 3 bases, a bank.
Oh, there's
but
no
until then,
here. Oh no!
He can recall.
That's going to be a very necessary recall.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, even without the Banshees obviously like were the best option there. The Marines are actually very important. They would tank maybe a couple unnecessary immortal shots, and the immortals are kind of slow. They're actually pretty, even unupgraded, they're kind of a scary part of the army. I mean, we saw a couple of 2-base attacks from, I don't know if it was Lycan exactly, but maybe from him and another mech player. Where the Marines are actually the heroes.
Goody actually plays very similar to Lillekanin, or Lillekanin plays similar to Goody, depending on your point of view. Where they'll go for the heavier Banshees, they'll go for the Marines to buffer, and it becomes less about that air tech, more about that ground tech. It's weird too, because you know we see Zerg mech, like Terran versus Zerg mech tends to be get to battlecruisers, get to Ravens, you know, win the game. It's not exactly the same iteration because of course just how good Templar are. Being able to feedback most late game units doesn't make them quite effective versus mech, but tank positioning is going to be key. The nice thing is once you start getting enough tanks, the diminishing returns kind of I don't know how to phrase this better, but they get better versus immortals the more you have. That splash damage, of course, helps tear down those shields, and once the shields are gone, the immortals are just another armored unit. There's the space slam.
Well, a surprisingly important part of this army are not the feedbacks necessarily, although that is important, but sometimes the storms. Mech army just generally clumps up. You don't think that storm's gonna be that effective, so you don't bother spreading out, and if you spread out, then maybe zealots get more surface area, you know, either or. But storms can shoot very, very good. If they don't get immediately sniped down by the tanks, and I don't think we've really seen any mech players target fire tanks yet on Protoss, they can add a lot of damage.
Well, there's a couple hallucinated units in the army, and of course, let's not forget hallucinated immortals also get that hardened shield effect, but even with the Hellions, or Hellbats on the front line, yeah, those storms are still going to come down, and I like that he's multi-layered the tanks, but will this be enough is a big question. The Raven gets nothing off through this. A Secret Missile or 2 would have been absolutely fantastic, but the Immortals coming through. If all the anti-air goes down, the Banshee will hold ultimately at the end of the day. It's more than one. It's about 4 or 5 Banshees. Oh, they've got to get that. Oh, they're out of energy for Cloak, though, so maybe not, maybe not. This is looking pretty bad for Lillekanin.
This is officially a bust. I mean, the Hellbat drop's gonna do good damage on that 3rd base, but at this point, Jade, he can just chrono out the probes that he loses. He's gonna have a 4th base as well. They're not gonna kill any buildings.
I think he's been broken.
Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much he kills here. The command center can't even really lift. The stocks to get chased. The Immortals have not got an answer. Good game was called, and Jade will take game number 1 off of the Meching Master Lillekanin.
There's some nice feedbacks on the Ghost, too.